Thank you. It's a real pleasure to be here today. I see it's all red and white, maybe some scarlet and gray here and there.
No.
And I'm glad to be with you as the Democratic nominee for the Ohio governor in 2018. That was not an easy primary. Primaries never are, even though it ended up having a significant margin. We all went out and worked very hard, fought for every vote, and led with our hearts, I believe, and made our case for what we wanted to do for the state of Ohio. And we found that there were occasional disagreements, but a lot of agreement, because there's a lot of change that we need in Ohio right now. And it starts with changes in our approach to education. Clap for that. Betty Sutton is my running mate. Some of you know Betty, I'm sure. And I have gotten to know her well over the course of this campaign, and she is a strong figure. Like me, she is a graduate of Ohio's public schools, a proud graduate of our public schools, and my children are also graduates of our public schools. We're from the Southwestern City School District. It's a big enough district that I always find a few. Thank you. And the first thing I want to say is that people need to recognize in this state that our teachers do a tremendous job of educating our children. And not just educating our children in the subjects that are in the curriculum, but raising our children and giving them an example of leadership, of mentorship, of friendship, often. And it has a tremendous amount to do with building communities across the state of Ohio. You and I know that communities in Ohio are often revolve around the school district and the activities in those school buildings and the extracurricular activities as well. That was true in my area growing up. It's true in my area as my children are growing up, and it will be the way it is in Ohio for a long, long time to come. And one of the things that we need to keep in mind is how much difference each teacher makes in the lives of the children, the parents, their colleagues, and the community. And I'll give you an example. I guess it was actually just about a year ago, a little more, year and a month, year and 2 months maybe. My children had a particular teacher. They had a lot of great teachers, but they had a particular teacher who had contracted cancer. And it turned out to be, sadly, an aggressive form of cancer. And they had this teacher during their junior year, and they were having him again during their senior year. And the decline was swift, and ultimately he passed away late in the semester. And there was a memorial service at the high school for him. He had been a teacher and coach for many years, and that memorial service was overflowing. And if you want to understand what difference people can make in their community, go to any longtime teacher, longtime coach, somebody who's brought generations of children along, and see what difference they make in the community. And my children still put on the bulletin board at home, there's a chalkboard when you walk in, and they like to write things on there. Occasionally they will put up what he put up on his bulletin board in the classroom, which was, "Think!" exclamation point. His name was Mr. Morrow. And I know that you know many of your own colleagues, past and present, of whom the same could be said, the difference you make in our communities. So to begin with, let's not let people say that public education is a problem in Ohio. Let's celebrate the progress we make every day with strong public schools in this state. Now, there are some and I saw this in Washington when I was the head of the Consumer Bureau, there are some people who don't like government, and they don't like anything associated with government, and they don't want to see government succeed. And they have tried to poison the American people and Ohioans on the notion that we should support and respect and appreciate our government, whether it's schools or anything else. I saw people in Washington, D.C. who tried to get in the way of government and then complained about it when it didn't work. That's wrong. And we've had our share of that in Ohio. This failed for-profit charter school experiment has been devastating to education in the state of Ohio. And it has taken resources out of our public schools, and it's taken children out of our public schools and sold them on a false promise, and it has been wrong for Ohio. And they've never even had the courage of their convictions. You know, when this whole thing got started, it was supposed to be so much better. We were going to introduce principles of competition into education of our children. It was going to be the free market. That was going to be so much better. And groups like ECOT and others bought into that in a big way. And the state of Ohio bought into them. And now we've seen the fruits of what that really is. You have online charter schools where kids don't have computers, where kids never log in, where kids don't attend, where they sit online and do nothing for hours at a time, and all of that is counted as a regular school day. You could never get away with anything like that, and they would never let you get away with anything like that, and you would never get away with anything like that because you take pride in your work and you know it's about raising and educating our children. But that's what they did at ECOT. And over $1 billion was poured into that school over the years it was in existence, and every penny of that came out of our public schools, came out of our children, and represented a failure and an abuse of taxpayers in Ohio, and it's time that it stops. Now, the story is even worse than that, as many of you know, because to begin with, they were supposed to be held accountable. There was going to be a comparison made between what they were accomplishing and what you were accomplishing. But when the complaints started to come in, because the watchdog was actually watching, they went to the powers that be, and one of them is on the Republican ticket this year, and they asked to have the watchdog removed. And that's what happened. And so for years, those schools have never been held to any standards at all. They haven't had the courage to face them up against our schools, and they have not performed. And that's all been allowed, and that's all been okay, and it's not okay. It's not okay in Ohio that these schools are allowed to take our money and not deliver education for our children. And let's talk about the ECOT scandal in particular. So that school went belly up mid-year this year, and 13,000 students were left to fend for themselves. And the CEO said, well, you know, good luck with that. Godspeed, you know, find a place in the middle of the year, and all these schools and classrooms and teachers need to make adjustments because of their failure. That guy started his business on the back of a napkin at Waffle House on the west side of Columbus. And when he saw that this charter school boondoggle was going to take off, he wanted in on it. And he made his plans, and he sold his ideas, and he got their money, and he took their money. And what did he do with that money? He greased the palms of our legislators and our state officials so that they would look the other way and they would not hold anybody accountable. Millions of dollars went into those contributions. And now we're finding, just yesterday, that we're finally finding that this is going to be referred for criminal prosecution. And years late, and millions of dollars short, by the way, on the auditor's part, I will say, But it's going to be referred for prosecution, and now they're finding that the campaign contributions, many of those were illegal as well, and that will likely be referred for prosecution as well. But ECOT has closed, others are springing up to take its place, and the beat goes on. And what's happened to the founder, the fellow from Waffle House? Well, he's got a $995,000 house in Upper Arlington here. He's got a house on Senecaville Lake in Ohio. He's got a $3.7 million mansion in Key West, Florida, which I guess is his dream retirement house. And what do we get? We get left holding the bag. That's our money that has bought all those places for him. And it's wrong. Now, we also have other corruption this year on Capitol Square in a different area, an area I'm familiar with, which is payday lending. We have a Speaker of the House who's just resigned his office amid an FBI probe into the fact that he traveled the world, apparently, on the dime of payday lending lobbyists and took fancy trips, people serving themselves at our expense, and he traded favors on legislation. And right now, it's perfectly legal in the state of Ohio to charge an interest rate of 594% on payday loans that don't help anybody's future, they just ruin people's lives. And that's what we have out of our state government in Columbus. That needs to change. And my opponent in this race, Mike DeWine, as Attorney General, never did anything, never lifted a finger to stop any of that abuse, has never done anything but look the other way, never held anybody accountable, and will say to you, well, it was not my job, it was somebody else's job. Right. Now let me talk about education and the failures there. We should have in this state an ability to find a way to get to universal pre-K, because we have 40% of our children coming to school not ready to learn. Coming to school not ready to learn, and we have about 40% of our students coming out of high school not yet ready for the workplace, and there's a direct correlation between those two, we know that. And we need to improve the affordability of further education in this state. K through 12 is important, but it's not enough. And we need free community college, and we have a plan for that. And it's an affordable plan, and we need to find ways to help people have access to further education and training. You know, in your field, it is quite common now to have a master's degree. I mean, you all not only work in education, you're all about education. That's a big part of your lives, and you value it and you understand it and you have worked at it for years. Let me talk about K through 12. We have had a legislature that for years and years keeps adding, has a mania for standardized tests. We're going to have more testing. We're going to have more control. We're going to take the discretion out of the classroom. We're going to make you teach to the test. We're going to make it so that teachers who are trained to know how to deal with students in their classroom and raise them and educate them can't do their jobs. We are going to roll that back, and we're going to have reform in the state of Ohio. And we are going to have an administration that will listen to teachers, the ones who know best, the ones who are face-to-face in our classroom, making our future. We're going to talk to you and understand from you how we should go about monitoring, what we should do about thinking about pay and incentives. And the monitoring is a joke as well. You've seen those cartoonish report cards that they want to have, A through F in our schools, and first of all, they're inconsistent, they don't make a lot of sense. Second, they don't have a real purpose that makes a great deal of sense. And third, they are poorly executed, as everything has been poorly executed in the administration of education in Ohio. And we will change that when Betty Sutton and I are elected. I know I have a time limit up here, Becky, so you give me the high sign. But Another thing that we object to strongly is there's now an effort in the state of Ohio to have the state sweep aside local control of certain districts and pronounce them failing and decide that the state's going to run them instead. The state knows best. This is the same state government that made such a hash of charter school oversight and accountability, but they're now going to run our school system for us, as they think they're doing now in Lorain and in Youngstown. And by the way, there are new districts on the bubble in danger of the same treatment. That's not the way we get things done in the state of Ohio. First of all, many of our districts, as I said, do extremely well. And for those that are in trouble or having difficulty, we should work with them, not take it away from them, not take all the local control away. Not shove aside the voices who know best what's going on in that community and what the challenges are. We need to do a little more listening and stop just talking. We need to do a little more working together and not just dictating. And it's time Columbus got the message that they are not the kings and queens of the state of Ohio. Now, Betty Sutton and I stand for a state that we can be proud of, a state that's not going to be governed on behalf of some of us and the most powerful interests who have their way on Capitol Square, but all of us. It's going to be a state that's going to be understanding that our communities need to be inclusive and welcoming and diverse and tolerant, and we need to embrace the talents of everyone in Ohio if this state is going to move ahead as it should. It's the right thing to do, it's the right way to treat one another, and it's also the best way to proceed in this state. And there's a lot that we need to do in this state. We've had leaders who have been most focused on themselves and on the special interests and not focused on the needs of millions of Ohioans, and we will change that. We have been talking about the kitchen table issues in this campaign because that's what we hear about from Ohioans. It's what's on people's minds. They're worried about their futures. They're worried about access to affordable health care. They're worried about getting that education and training that they and their children need to secure their futures. And they want economic opportunity to be spread out across the state so that no one is left out and no one is left behind. And that's not the way it's been for a generation here in Ohio. And it's going to change if you help us change it. I got a story of in my own background. When I was elected here in 2002 as the Franklin County Treasurer, I went to OEA and asked them about their interest or involvement in that race. It was a county office, and at the time, they weren't really set up to deal with a county race. They didn't really see the point. State legislative races, absolutely. Statewide races, of course, setting policy for education. School board races and local levy races, absolutely, critical to the schools. But they didn't quite understand how a county office would matter. As county treasurer, my job was to collect the property taxes for the county and, of course, for the school districts, and make sure that people got paid, made sure people paid those taxes and that they paid them timely, and that we got the money out to the schools timely. And we had a delinquent tax problem in Franklin County where a number of businesses had decided over time they weren't going to pay that tax. And they were going to see if anybody came after them, and nobody did. So we had a lot of delinquent unpaid tax in Franklin County. And I pledged to clean that up, and we did. And we got that money back to the schools. And when I ran the next time, I went back and we talked about it again, and they put together a group that actually endorsed in the race that year. And I worked with the education associations in all of the communities in Central Ohio, in Franklin County, Gahanna and Westerville and Worthington and Upper Arlington and Dublin and Hilliard, Grove City, all of them. And we had a terrific result that year because I was with the teachers. And the teachers are the opinion leaders and the respected people in their communities. And when you all go out and have the confidence to speak up and speak out, and if you run other campaigns the way you run levy campaigns, we can make change in this state. And we can make that change in this state this year. Yes. And I want to say that I learned that from the education associations in Central Ohio, and I want us to do that with education associations all across Ohio in 2018. And with your help, Betty and I will win, and then we'll have a chance to make change, and you will have the voice at the table that you've wanted to have for quite some time about, you know best how we can improve public education in Ohio and where we can build on what are already ample strengths and where we can shore up what are occasional weaknesses. And we will do that together. And I look forward to doing that together with you, and I look forward to being your education governor. Not my education governor, your education governor. Thank you.